Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being here and joining us today for GIS After Dark. My name is Cassie Hansen, and I am the Program Director for the GIS and Environmental Science and Policy programs at Johns Hopkins University. This presentation is being recorded, and it will be available at our JHU GIS YouTube channel once it has been processed. So feel free to go back and view past presentations and then wait a couple weeks and you'll be able to see the one from tonight. For those of you who are joining us for our first time, the speaker series is designed to highlight the amazing work that the industry of GIS professionals, JHU students, and alumni are doing in the field of GIS. Just to give you a little bit of background about GIS, I do this every month just to make sure we're all on the same page. Geographic Information System, otherwise known as GIS, allows for the creation and collection of geospatial information in the form of simple maps or apps. And representing what is known is incredibly important. And we've seen the use of GIS over the years, tracking various diseases across the globe in the forms of data collection, analysis, maps creation, and also applications. And we're always trying to figure out the why, the when, the where, and the how of our geospatial world. And we can see how GIS is used in different platforms. These are some examples of my past cartography students, their final products focusing on climate, infrastructure, place-based species, and different trends in population. So GIS is used all throughout many different disciplines. Well, I am so pleased to welcome the guest presenter tonight. We are joined tonight by Nick Hudson, who is a maritime cartographer with Wiser Imagery Services. He is an alumnus of Johns Hopkins University, where he earned his master's in science in the Geospatial Intelligence program. And here in the program, he completed an open source intelligence report on Myanmar Air Force aerial campaign against civilians focusing on the Myanmar Civil War. His report was published this last June with the National-Geospatial Intelligence Agency, Tearline.mil, online publication, and that came out June 2025. And so Nick is joining us tonight, and he will be highlighting his work mapping atrocities in Myanmar. Thank you so much for joining tonight.
So hello and welcome to GIS After Dark, Mapping Atrocities in Myanmar. Thank you very much, Cassie, for that wonderful introduction, and let's get started. Tonight we'll be looking at how the Myanmar Air Force has waged an aerial campaign targeting the civilian population of Myanmar during the Civil War. So to give a bit of background about myself, my name is Nick Hudson. I hold a bachelor's in international affairs and a minor in GIS from George Washington University, and graduated, as Cassie said, with a master's in geospatial intelligence from Hopkins in May of this year. Currently, I'm a maritime cartographer, and the focus of this project and tonight's presentation is Myanmar. So, for a lot of people, Myanmar is not really a country that is top of mind. But my interest in the country stems back to actually representing it at a Model United Nations conference in high school, and then I developed a continuing interest with the country over my academic career. So the events that focused global news coverage on Myanmar was the violent response to protesters and demonstrators demanding the elected leader be instated following a landslide Democratic victory. On the morning of February 1st, 2021, one day after Myanmar's parliament was set to endorse a national vote for Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League of Democracy, the military junta led by Min Aung Hlaing arrested the winning candidates and claimed control of the coup. The country was on a fast track to civil war. The following 4 years saw a crescendo of increasingly brutal tactics by the Tatmadaw to crack down and break the spirit of a widening variety of ethnic, ideological, and regional militia groups opposing the government. Unfortunately, as of February this year, the conflict resulted in an estimated 13,500 civilian targeting deaths, 20,000 arbitrary detentions, and more than 3.5 million internally displaced people. And while the displacement of people has been well documented by the UN, airstrikes against the civilian population have not received the appropriate attention, despite the increasing prevalence of their use. For this reason, I chose to take a look at the regions where air and drone strikes were most common, which can be seen in the map at right. A key resource in building out this report was the Center for Information Resiliency's Myanmar Witness Project. Matt Lawrence, the director of the project, says the airstrikes reflect the junta's strategy of pacification through fear and their clear and criminal disregard for civilian life. My first written report about the Myanmar Air Force air and drone strikes was written in fall 2023 as the use of aircraft in the conflict began to rise precipitously in all regions. The air and drone strike data is derived from the ACLET Armed Conflict Location and Event Dataset between February 2021 and March 2021-2025. Each airstrike was geolocated to a center point of a village struck when the highest geoprecision score was given. In Myanmar, 80 to 85% of the strikes possess the highest geoprecision score in the dataset, and 58.2% of all the strikes occurred between March 2024 and March 2025. As you see, the big spike up on the chart, the latter half of the conflict, the last year of the conflict.
Hey, Nick, your audio is going in and out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just wanted to
come a little closer. Interestingly, there was also a temporal pattern to the aerial strikes due to variable weather conditions across seasons in Myanmar. The dry season generally runs from mid-November to mid-March, and 52% of all airstrikes occurred between November and February over the 4 years of conflict, reflecting a temporal pattern across the years. Naturally, the next question is to ask what aircraft the Myanmar Air Force uses in these aerial strikes and which air bases house each type. Due to gaps in Jane's data, I leveraged the Maxar imagery library for the past 5 years to independently verify the presence of aircraft at the air bases surrounding the regions of focus for the report. The most frequently identified aircraft was the Mi-35, a helicopter, an export variant of the Mi-24 attack and transport helicopter gunship. This rotorcraft was responsible for 159 airstrikes, as identified by people on the ground. So the spatial component is a really important part of this report because proximity is everything. So most of the air bases inspected in the report are in the Mandalay, Sagaing, and Magway regions. These three regions were the focus of the report, as they were the highest amount of where the highest proportion of airstrikes and stuff. So, and in that, uh, we see that the largest airbase is Shantae, right in the middle of the map. Generally, the rotorcraft bases, the helicopter bases, are much closer to combat areas and consist of several paved helipads. Here's where I think the report's main strengths were most noticeable, and that's the each airbase graphic could be a standalone product in itself. So what I set out to do when I was formulating my project, and actually in the cartography course with Cassie, was to meet and build out a theme. I wanted to establish a tone. I wanted to build a rapport with the audience visually, so I could make a good, serious connection with them about a serious topic. And building good graphics is really an evolutionary process. So, based on the Tearline publication, they already had a type of typeface and color theme that was important to incorporate in their products, which I felt I could easily translate in the building out of my airbase graphics. So what I used, because to set the serious tone, was the dark blue backdrop and white text for easy readability, and it was used across all the products in my reports. Providing a scale bar, inset map, north arrow, and clear and consistent symbology across the products was also of vital importance. In the bottom left, in the legend, we have language that is used within the intelligence community to assert confidence in the calls that you are making, with the possible, probable, and confirmed, or highly likely, equating to yellow, green, and the dark blue. So you can see all the calls within the graphic, as well as in the legend, are consistently enforced here and with each airbase that's present in the report. And finally, it was important to show the collateral source links in the bottom left-hand corner and reference images next to each image of a aircraft at the airbase. So learning about aircraft ID and how to ID aircraft was not something that I did alone. It was something I learned from actually Professor Rennie Babiars, who teaches the geospatial communications course. And I can't recommend it highly enough. It was very formative in how I presented my writing in my final thesis. And also, he helped out with aircraft ID and the language that they use to differentiate wing types and tails and points and so forth on the aircraft. The middle part of the graphic, the K8, is straight from Myanmar Witness. Again, using existing resources, building on existing research was very important for this piece as well. Couldn't have been done without it. One of the more difficult portions of this project was sifting through imagery and performing damage assessment verification for images or the points where ACLED was saying villages were struck, hospitals were struck, schools or buildings. And I thought it was an important portion of the GIS side of the report to go out and see if I could, A, verify that it was there, that it was true, or B, increase the accuracy of the latitude and longitude of the coordinates. And that wouldn't have been possible without imagery from Maxar. So Maxar gave me access to their imagery library over the past 5 years, and I was able to look at all the images that were available, which is not very many for Myanmar, and get before and after images of the places that were said to be struck, and in some cases really confirm that the airstrikes did occur and they had impacted some buildings. However, the task of damage assessment is increasingly difficult now, given the fact that there was an airstrike, or there was a massive earthquake in March 28th, that hit across the river from Mandalay, one of the largest cities in central Myanmar. And a lot of the damage assessment would be conflated with earthquake damage based on the small initial size. Overall, 33.4% of Myanmar Air Force airstrikes targeted civilian in Myanmar during the study period of this conflict. 111 aerial strikes damaged religious buildings, 72 impacted schools, and 33 hit hospitals. Bagway, Sagaing, and finally, I was curious to understand if the airstrikes considered to be targeting civilians were carried out on average over longer distances than those than all the airstrikes in Myanmar. This turned out to be inconclusive hypothesis because there was no significant difference in the amount of distance traveled to attack civilian targets as opposed to any targets for military targets. The highlighted point in orange, orange box. That is one particular strike that piqued my interest because it was so far out of the realm of or typical range for strikes by aircraft, and it was identified as a A5C jet that hit that village in January 2024 with no military targets nearby. So looking forward, unfortunately, there is a very limited opportunity for further analysis of the imagery during this time period due to the earthquake and natural factors. Additionally, Myanmar was a very tough research environment due to internet service disruptions in a lot of the regions. Some groups organize Telegram channels to get out information, but it's inconsistent information, not always producible for all time periods based on this interference and jamming of the internet. But looking ahead for future analysis, if other people are interested in doing research on Myanmar, it would be possible to do research on the post-quake imagery and airstrikes, and in the aftermath of the quake, possibly the targeting of, unfortunately, civilian and humanitarian response to help people who are impacted. Another project could be to look at the use of arson by the Myanmar military over the time period of the Civil War. And finally, it remains to be seen how the Tatmadaw will leverage drones, handheld launch drones, or shorter range FPV drones, as they have received help from Russia developing capabilities, similar to what is going on. That's all for my presentation at the moment, but I'll open it up to questions, or we can go back and dissect decisions that I made on graphics, or see you guys how we can see from here.
Excellent, Nick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's all give him a round of applause. And I know there's some questions coming in the chat, so I'll get to those shortly. I did have one question I'm going to ask first. With the use of AI now in more images, visualization, have you had any thoughts about if you had to go back and rerun this analysis, would you try to do that incorporating AI as a tool, or what are your thoughts?
At the moment, imagery analysis done with AI platforms is very limited to what a first-year analyst can do. So identify, is that a plane or is it not a plane? Or is that a building or is it not a building? we haven't necessarily progressed beyond that at the moment, but we might be on the cusp of something in the coming years or months, depending on how fast progress is made. But at the moment, an imagery analyst of 6 months experience is still better than an AI.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Indra asked, in the red map, is the strike vector a flight distance up to target or striking distance from the airbase itself?
Yeah, so that is a predicted vector just from the center of the airbase to the village point. It is not reflective of how long an aircraft may travel. Depending on jamming equipment, and there is a lot of jamming in Myanmar from what I've seen in open sources. Sometimes they will navigate based on the river system, which is something I've had in previous graphics earlier in this presentation. So the river system, the Irrawaddy River is where Irrawaddy River is along where Tado Air Base is and Myitkyina Nampong. So some of them, I was trying to find a pattern along the river. Maybe they strike more targets along the river, but I didn't find that. But that was something I did look at.
Interesting. Thank you. Antonio has a question. Hi, Antonio. Thank you for being here tonight. Do you think there is potential to use this data in predictive or weighted models to help minimize civilian casualties?
I'm unsure. I'm unsure because it doesn't seem that random. It is where there are more airstrikes targeting civilians. There's also airstrikes executing military operations because they are relatively close in proximity. The militias control essentially the village areas, the rural areas of Myanmar, and 70% of the population of Myanmar is in rural areas. So where there are people, there are casualties, unfortunately. I don't know that necessarily you could make a predictive model based on the findings here necessarily.
Thank you. And so for those that are here tonight, this was part of Nick's capstone project, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, right? This was your capstone, which was a requirement of your program. And it was really neat to work with Nick because he came to our cartography class with this topic in mind. And so every lecture, every lab that we looked in and utilized different maps, Nick would apply these concepts to his topic. And at the end of the semester, he had this robust catalog of maps that he had created. And so it's really, really neat to see your maps represented on the screen here, Nick. And I think you should be very, very proud of your spatial and visualization efforts that you put into this.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, for those that are thinking of capstone projects, any advice to students that as they're thinking of capstone projects, any kind of words of wisdom that you have for them?
When you find a topic and you know there is data available that is good, absolutely go for it, because rarely do you get these golden golden egg scenarios with the ACLED data set with such high geoprecision of airstrike locations. And you can really create a lot of unique products once you find that data. But finding the data is the most difficult part. So allocate enough time. Allocate enough time to research and really broaden your horizons about what's out there, what's possible, and great things can happen.
Excellent. Gabrielle posted in the chat. She said, this is an interesting exercise in spatial analysis, and it can be applied in other contexts. For example, it could be applied to interventions by other powerful nations that wish to impose their dominance over Latin America through military might and large navies, which they use to control and to dominate international waters and even sovereign territories with battleships and bombers, preventing free movement and terrorizing free and unarmed peoples. Good example, Gabrielle. Thank you for that. Just as, you know, is there any other examples, Nick, that you think that this could be applied for, that you have a desire to explore further? Do you want to stay in this region, or do you have goals to go elsewhere?
I think it could be applied in several regions, and one that's top of mind outside of the mainstream media coverage is really Sudan. There's a huge opportunity there to do some really good work and help understand the scale of the atrocities that are being committed by the Rapid Support Forces, I believe it's called, in Sudan, the RSF in Darfur region. So I see that it's possible to do some spatial analysis there. If you can get your hands on imagery and you can go and map something, go for it.
Excellent. Excellent words of wisdom there. And so I'll pause for a moment. Are there any remaining questions? Nick, I think this was wonderful. I really am happy that you were able to come back and share with us your kind of final work and beyond. So again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. Any other questions from those joining us tonight? I know it might be late for those in Germany and other places around the world, so I want to appreciate you being here. But I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any more questions. All right. Well, I think you answered them all, Nick. Thank you so much. And audience, thank you for being here tonight and attending the last GIS After Dark of 2025. Let's go ahead and just give Nick another round of applause. So thank you, Nick, for being here again. All right, guys. Well, with that said, I just wish you a good evening. And Nick, thank you again for being here tonight. And hope to see you guys in 2006 for GIS After Dark for our next round of presentations. Thank you, Nick.
All right. Thank you very much.